Well, good afternoon and welcome to our third webinar in the last 7 days. As we've stated in the past, the information, the rules are changing at a rapid pace. So some of this information is time sensitive. We thought it incumbent on sharing that information as it comes out. Today's date, April 15th, usually celebrated by tax professionals as the last day of tax season, but again, this is not a normal tax season. So we want to bring you this information. And as of April 15th, we believe the information in this webinar is correct. We still have a lot of unknown information, though. Driving to work today, I noticed that gas is, for the first time in a long time, under $1 a gallon. And my question is, will the IRS change the standard mileage rate going forward for business travel? I've seen it had done in the past when there's been a significant change in the cost of gas, but again, I don't think this is on the IRS's radar right now. Just one of the things that I thought about as I was driving into the office today. A couple of things I want to touch on is additional COVID-19 updates as it relates to IRS updates, some of the procedures there, the stimulus payments themselves, and then something time sensitive on required minimum distributions and some potential planning for those folks that have received a distribution this year. Let's start with the IRS and some of the updates there. As you can imagine, with the social distancing, they've closed some of the service centers, so they're not currently processing paper returns. Again, they encourage folks to file electronically, but paper returns are not being processed at this time. According to IRS statistics, more than 90% of taxpayers have filed electronically. But again, we're talking about the 10% that did not. Those paper returns are not being processed. What the IRS is asking is that taxpayers do not file a second tax return or write to the IRS if they've already filed a paper return. Don't ask about your stimulus payment by writing to the IRS. We'll talk about some tools that they've set up on their website that may be helpful there, but do not file a second return. They're just not processing, so it will take some time. Speaking of time, paper returns will be processed once the service centers are reopened, but a lot of the workforce is working from home, and it's impossible to process the returns when they're not at the IRS themselves. As far as the stimulus payments, today's date, April 15th, a lot of taxpayers are receiving their stimulus payment. It's my understanding the IRS started these payments to taxpayers last Saturday, so they're slowly coming out. A majority of the folks are getting that payment today, April 15th, and a large majority of Americans should have or should receive within the next 2 weeks their economic impact payment. That's for the direct deposit. It's my understanding that right after that, the last part of April, early May, they'll start rolling out with the checks for those people that don't have direct deposit information in place. So direct deposit has started, checks to follow soon. Speaking of procedures from the IRS, they've just introduced 2 new online tools that are available for taxpayers to help with this. The first tool is Filers Get Your Payment. Now, this is something that people can use to check their payment status. They can update their direct deposit information if it's not on file with the IRS, and also confirm the payment type, whether they're going to get a direct deposit or a paper check. Now, a couple words of caution here. Practitioners, please tell your clients that they should only try to access this once per day. And the reason for that, if they try to access more than that, they can get locked out and possibly not be able to get back in. So this is certainly a word of caution for those people that aren't satisfied by checking just one time. Just check one time a day. The IRS is urging this also because they don't want to be overwhelmed with their website, a lot of people trying to get in at the same time. So that's the first tool for Get My Payment. The second tool is for non-filers to enter their information. So these are folks that maybe were below the filing requirement and they had no reason to file in the past. Remember, the stimulus payment is based on 2019 tax information. If a 19 return is not filed, they'll look back to 2018. Well, there are some folks that fall under that category where they didn't have to file for either year. This is where they could enter some information on the IRS website. What they are also saying on the website is do not use this tool if you're receiving Social Security benefits or railroad retirement benefits. Those folks shouldn't have to do anything additional to get the economic payment. So be aware of those rules as well. From the practitioner side, some people have the power of attorney and they send that into the CAF system. At this time, they're not able to process that, so don't be sending the POAs to the CAF system and request the IRS to help you there. In addition to that, the income verification express service is also on hold. So a lot of services being shut down from the IRS, as well as the practitioner priority service line. This is temporarily closed until they restaff that or give the all clear for those individuals to get back into the office. So as far as processing or getting some help from the IRS, it's certainly a challenge now. Like many of the businesses, they've sent some people home, and it's hard for them to process that information. A couple of things I want to update. Since my last webinar, talk about rapid change. I did my first webinar last week. 2 days later, they came out with a notice that made some things obsolete in the first webinar I did, not just 7 days ago. Notice 2023 extended the second estimated payment. So the April 15th and now the June 15th tax estimate is deferred until July 15th. In addition to that, there is a deadline for 2016 tax returns for claim for refund. Those individuals that had not filed and are looking for a refund for their 2016 tax return, today's date, April 15th, was the normal due date, but that had been extended under Notice 2023, so they also have until July 15th as the new due date to claim those refunds as well. So a bit of an update to additional extended periods of time to file. Again, as a reminder, if you do need more time or your client needs more time, you can file the extension, the 4868, to get that out to October 15th. Just make sure that you file the 4868 by July 15 to have a valid extension. Gives you a little more time to file, not to pay, but more time to file until October, mid-October. Another thing I want to touch on a little bit deeper here, this is the time-sensitive information, is the waiver for the required minimum distributions. That's just for 2020 only. So an otherwise required minimum distribution is basically waived this year for distributions from defined contribution plans as well as IRAs. Now this also includes those individuals who turned 70.5 in 2019 and they chose to defer that first payment, take it out in the first quarter of 2020. That's also been deferred. So no RMDs are required in 2020. But there are some individuals who's already taken their required minimum distribution. They can actually do a rollover and not treat it as taxable for 2020. Again, as a reminder, I touched on this before, typically you cannot roll over an RMD, but for this year, there is no RMD. So that changes the rules for rollover. It's just a regular distribution. It's not a required minimum distribution, as nothing is required. So let's do a couple of examples and talk about, again, that notice 2020-23 and how that affected these individuals who may have taken a distribution from their IRA. Watch the dates here. I've got this one underlined in example 1. Let's assume on January 31st of this year, Kathy took out an RMD from her IRA. Well, there is no RMD requirement, so she has the ability to roll over some or all of that IRA distribution. Now we think about the traditional 60 days to roll over an IRA distribution. That would take it out to March 31st. As of today, April 15th, that day has come and gone. So if she had taken it out, she had the ability to roll it back in. Now this was a short window because they didn't waive the RMD requirements until mid-March. So there was a short window for someone to get that information and make that valid rollover. Now, as I said, we had another notice that came along, and in addition to extending the estimated payments and other claims, there's a provision inside the notice that taxpayers have until July 15th to perform any specified time-sensitive actions. That would include the 60-day rollover. If that due date to perform that action falls between on or after April 1st and before July 15th. So let's assume the same facts from the first example, except in this case, Kathy took her IRA distribution, her RMD, one day later, from January 31st in example 1 to February 1st in example 2. Normally the 60 days would put that rollover time frame on April 1, but that falls into this extended time that's provided for in Notice 2020-23. So now she has until July 15th. So the difference of one day, taking a distribution in January 31 versus February 1, the second example, they have until July 15th to complete that rollover distribution. Now, just a couple words of caution here. The relief provisions did not do anything to change the rule that we can only do one rollover from an IRA in a 365-day period. Some people talk about this as the 1 year rule. It's 1 year from the date of the IRA withdrawal. So it's not based on a calendar year. It's not one rollover per calendar year. It's one rollover for every 365 days. So that could prevent someone from rolling some money back in. That's something that just has to be checked. And these are areas that, again, we're not used to asking our senior clients that have been taking RMDs in the past. They weren't allowed to do a rollover. Now they are. Some have a little bit more time than others. Hopefully, the IRS will come out with some specific 60-day and once per year rule, allowing for any RMD distributions taken out in 2020 to get that money rolled back in. But at this time, that is not the case. Again, April 15th is the date of the webinar. Just want to let you know that you can find additional information on our website with our free tax newsletter. Follow us on Facebook or check us out at btbtaxlink.com for additional updates. As always, our goal is to have everyone stay safe, stay positive through all this, and we'll continue to get you information as it develops.